Hi there, welcome to our YouTube Live with Emilia Serrano, class of '95. She works in Hollywood as a writer, and she's worked on such shows as Rizzoli Isles, The Finder, and is currently developing Off the Rack, which is a Televisa property in coordination with Zoe Saldana's
She works in Hollywood
Cinestar,
as a writer, and she's worked on such shows.
And so thanks a lot, Emilia, for getting a chance to sit down with us and talk about kind of your experience through Hollywood.
So should I tell you the St. Mary's part?
All right. So yeah, kind of talk about like how you kind of got to where you are today, and take us through your journey from St. Mary's to now.
So I wanted to be an advertising writer. And so when I went to St. Mary's, that was kind of my focus. I took all the creative writing classes. There were a couple ad writing classes, but anything that said creative writing or whatever, those are all the classes that I took. And I was on that path to be an ad writer because I loved and was obsessed with advertising. So there's a lot of joy in that. And then there was a time in my freshman year where there was SMC TV. I don't know if you guys have SMC. I think you guys have it again, right? And I was working in the pub where underneath the brick pile, and I was pouring beers. That's what I did. So I would kind of sarcastically and sassy give people a hard time when they would ask for beer or try to push back or whatever. And I just wouldn't take it. And people thought it was funny. And there was a senior there who was like, hey, I want to do this TV show, kind of like a man on the street. I think you would be great for it. So I did that freshman year with Katie McCaffrey, who actually is a fancy executive assistant in San Francisco. And she was my camera person, and I did that. And I was very off the cuff, and it was really fun and creative. And then we got in trouble because I made fun of one of the nuns, one of the sisters. And so we couldn't go on anymore. So that was fine. And then, I kind of thought, well, it's still creative and still writing. That was fun. And that it felt very separate, advertising is one thing, and doing these very kind of observing humor was separate. And then Jan term, there was a class that was offered. And of course I didn't sign up for any class in time. And there was one that was something about adapting a chapter of a book into a scene, a scripted scene, a script. So we did that, and I loved it. I was loved, so obsessed with it. It was the most fun ever. I got my paper back, and I got a C. And I was like, oh my God, I suck at this. I got a C. I got a C in math. Of course, I'm who cares? I'm not going to be a mathematician. That's fine. But when I got a C in that, it was kind of discouraging. And I went to the teacher, and he actually confused my paper with someone else's paper. I don't think I even looked at the name closely. And then I was like, wait, this isn't mine. And he goes, oh, I confused you. No, you actually got an A on yours, and that other girl got a C. And I was like, that's awesome. Sucks for the other girl. But at that point, that kind of started the seed of growing that dream that had seemed so far removed for me to actually exist and happen. My parents are car factory workers. That's pretty much no shortcut to Hollywood. And I didn't know anyone, and I wasn't connected. So it wasn't until after college, then I went and I became an ad writer, became a associate creative director. And at that point I was offered this big job at a global ad agency full time. And I knew that if I took it, I would never be a screenwriter. And I had moved to LA to kind of see what would happen. And I became busy. And so it was that pivotal moment where I had lunch with a friend of my husband's who was a screenwriter. And he said, there's not enough female voices, and there's definitely not enough Latina female voices. If you can figure out how to freelance in advertising while write scripts, I really think you should quit and not take that full-time job. And I did, and I've never had a full-time job since. So that was, there were two very important things. One was, it was the ability to take that to me, that Janturn class is that it's like such a wish fulfillment that other schools don't really do. For somebody like me who couldn't afford to go to study abroad, you know, who couldn't afford to do like the summer whatever in some other place, or I couldn't even intern because internship paid you nothing and I needed to make money. It was that class of like that. It's such a wish fulfillment class of what do you think you want to do? Or like, not even so much that, but I find that when people hit a certain age and they've had even good careers, they're like, I don't know if this is my passion. So I think about if you took a Janturn class that was just a test of what your passion could be, that still could be something so fulfilling in your life, even if it didn't lead to a career, even if it led to something else, you know, like painting, or you guys have beer making now or something, right? Like that's so awesome. I don't need to make it. I was very good at pouring it, but I don't know if I have the patience to make it. So that had happened. And then I, through random relationships and friendships, had met some other writers who were willing to read my stuff and kept encouraging me and even saying like, it's not ready yet, or I have some notes. I was told I have really good dialogue and interesting family stories that I implemented. And then I happened to meet the people that believed in me enough. And those are the same people that have actually helped my career since 7-8 years ago.
And kind of like maybe talk about that, working on some of these shows, and you work a little bit more with teams of writers, of like kind of discuss like those dynamics of working in a team and how that work is broken out, the editing process and that sort of thing.
Well, the good thing about having that small environment at St. Mary's, you know, I think about that a lot, and I actually talk about that when I, you know, like speak to people who are like graduating or maybe trying to break into the business, is the ability to speak up in a small setting can be intimidating for a lot of people, especially especially when your idea isn't good. You need to kind of have, one, the confidence, but also the vulnerability to be able to throw an opinion out and be okay with it sucking. You know, you're not always going to be right about it. And St. Mary's had the small classes where you kind of felt comfortable saying things, and even if it wasn't great, and you know, you had to go back and do it again and again every semester. So the writing room is a lot like that. It's I say that it's like a small conference room where you're with somebody 8 hours every day. And it's also like a soccer field, which I've played my whole life, which is some people are good scorers. Some people are good at, one thing. Some people are good with story. Some people are good with character. Some people are good with plots or twists. Some people are good with dialogue. So you basically, a showrunner who creates the show or somebody who leads the show and the story, they will pick their team of anywhere from 4 to 17 writers, depending on the show and the budget. And you form every episode together. So even though my name is on something that says written by, I have the heaviest hand in that story and in that script and in the dialogue. But we've all contributed to each other's script, whether in drama, because I made a shift from drama into comedy. Whether in drama it was helping to time the story or help to, solve the twist in a different way, or in a comedy room where you bring it back in and you do something called, a punch, where you just go through and you just like joke all day until you get the strongest joke. And I've been on a single cam comedy, which single cam is something that's not in front of a live audience, something that it has sets outside. And so it's different in that if something's not funny in a single cam, you can kind of just have the actors do different ones at a time and just go, okay, well, maybe these will be the funny ones. But then when I was on a multicam, like Christella, oh my God, I'm making dinner and my buzzer just went off. Hold on a second. I'll do it in a second. In a multicam, you're in front of a live audience, and depending on if you think the audience laughed hard enough, we'll all huddle together and do jokes and be like, okay, we need a different joke here, you know, and then we'll try that joke again and then see if the audience laughed harder or not. So a multicam is shot in front of a live audience. A lot of people think that it's fake laughter, and it's not fake laughter. It's actually tightened laughter, because due to time, you have to shorten the laughter of somebody, or else you're cutting into your story time. Hold on one second. Sorry.
In the meantime, for anyone who is watching, we have a Halloween series going on right now, and you can actually hear Brother Michael Meister tell ghost stories on our Facebook page right now. So facebook.com/Gale alumni.
Okay.
All right. So then kind of talk about like the different inspirations you have for different genres. Like you say, like you've done drama, you've done comedy, and like where do kind of the ideas come from based on which one you're doing?
A lot of times the procedural stuff is based on real crimes, or the showrunner gives you kind of, we call them fence posts, you know, like by episode 4, they should find out who the father is. By episode 8, we should find out. So they're different. And when I was working on a procedural like Rizzoli Isles, it was very crime of the week, and I didn't like it. It wasn't my type of story. I liked the show and I like working on it. I met some great people, but I was like, that's not really my thing. I'm not like The Following. I'm not like The Blacklist. And my first show, though, was My Generation, which Noah Hawley created, who also created the TV version of Fargo on FX. And his was relationship driven, which I liked hour-longs that were relationship driven, or dramedies, which are like Jane the Virgin is a dramedy. It's some elements, but it's really about the relationships more than the crimes, or a crime or a mystery. So I would say that allowed me to kind of define which things that I do. Comedy I love, whether it's single cam or multicam. I just got off writing on Comedy Get Down, which is based on the real life behind the scenes stuff that happened on the road while the Comedy Get Down tour happened. And the Comedy Get Down has George Lopez, Cedric the Entertainer, D.L. Hughley, Eddie Griffin, and Charlie Murphy. So coming off of that, all those ideas were actually inspired by weird stuff that happened to them on the road. You know, like, oh my God, when we were here, this happened. And we're like, okay, cool. And we started grabbing all the stories and kind of making episodes for them. And some of the stories that felt a little not as strong. A strong story is called an A story, and you know, a supporting story is called a B story. So that was easy because they gave it to us. It was supposed to be inspired by them. Something like Cristela was inspired by Cristela Alonso's stand-up and her comedy. But also we pitched things that happened to us in our own lives. You know, I have 2 very blonde, blue-eyed kids, and people always think I'm the nanny. And Cristela, actually, people would think she was the nanny when she was helping her kids. And so we created an episode together based on both of our experiences. You know, so a lot of times you can pitch your real life and it may not be what they want, but you have to be okay if somebody's like, I don't like it. Especially if you're a Latino writer and they expect you to be the voice of every single Latino in all of North America. You know, I was like, I'm Cali-Mex, you know, like I was, you know, I'm a Bay Area Mexican. My parents are from a border town. So I know all the foods from San Francisco to Tijuana. But other than that, if somebody's like, what's that white sauce? I'm like, I don't know what white sauce. I was like, that's not a thing. My grandmother had a Mexican restaurant in the Bay Area, so she actually had 2 at some point. And I'm like, unless it was on the menu, dude, I don't know what sauce you're talking about.
And one of the things you did bring up a little earlier was kind of that fact that someone brought up the fact that your voice would be one that would be sought after mainly because you are a Latino writer and a woman writer. Yeah. And so, and there has been a lot of conversation over the past couple of years about the lack of people of color as writers or actors, actresses and kind of how has that conversation impacted what you do, and what differences have you seen, if any, in the industry?
One of the main reasons why I became a TV writer was because I didn't see, and also one of the reasons why I didn't think I could ever be a TV writer was because I didn't see anything that resembled me. I mean, we had what, Chico and the Man in the 70s? I don't even know what year that was. And we had the George Lopez show, which still was just one family, but there weren't like tons of shows. So sometimes when somebody says, oh, well, you know, isn't there a show about a Latino family already? And I was like, yeah, there's only one cop show out, right? No, there's like a million cop shows out. There's like a million shows about medical, and there's legal shows. It feels a lot like the fight isn't over. And as a Latina writer, and I say that as somebody who is Latina, but somebody who's also writes those stories. Every single story that I've written or sold as my own has had that element in it. If I complained about it and didn't help change that by showing them that other stories could be done, then I shouldn't be complaining about it. And that's probably a lot of my mom's influence on me, who like moved to the Midwest and has like the Mexican Cultural Society doing ballet folklorico all over the place, you know, to show that there are other things that people haven't seen. So the struggle's real, is what I say, and it's not over. And I have Latino writer friends who don't write Latino characters. You know, they don't feel that that is something that they have to do in every single pitch or script that they try to sell, which is fine. You know, you have to speak and write your truth. But it is something that I think may be holding me back a little bit. You know, it's the marathon of Hollywood is long. And because it's long, then I figure that if I can just be true to myself, then find the right partners who understand that, then that's a better relationship that I want to have than pretending I'm something I'm not to get ahead faster. I pitched, I'm developing my first movie with Noah Hawley at 26 Keys. And that just happened recently because I had this story about a Latina turning 30. And, you know, cultural identity is like such an issue for people. And even yesterday, I had one of my friends over. He's 31, and he's the only one in his family that doesn't speak Spanish. And so he finds that a lot of times he really struggles with trying to be a part of that culture that ultimately will judge him for not speaking. So there's so many different layers and stories that I don't think that we've seen enough of them to happen. But I do pitch all the time. I'm like, what if, what if that person, you know, was William Levy? You know, like, what if? And that's all you can do. And if somebody believes in that enough, you know, there's I'll give you advice that Noah Hawley gave me. One thing was, when you find people who believe in you and are fans in you, you will find your career takes such a different path. And I think as we all try to fight, and I have African-American writer friends who, you know, they start groups, we start groups, and we try to support each other, but we're not the gatekeepers of things until we are the Shonda Rhimes and the Noah Hawleys and the Sean Levys and the Hart Hansen, you know, until we get to that point, we really can just keep putting it out there until somebody who is a gatekeeper says, yeah, okay, we're going to do that, or we're going to put money behind it, or we're at least going to buy it to see if that's something that we want. It's just shocking that there aren't enough is kind of the thing that I go back to. There aren't enough Latino stories, considering it's such a huge eyeball on movies and TV. You know, a lot of times they think if you just Hispanicize it, you know, like if you just add, my joke would be like, can you come up with a Latino Silver Spoons? You know, can you come up with a Latino Brady Bunch? Like, if you, like, just putting that in front of it doesn't make it automatically like a hit or a success. You know, it still has to have the truth of today and what people are going through. But it's not over, and it's a big fight. And sometimes, I'll tell you honestly, sometimes I'll have days where I'm like, shit, did I move this rock at all up this mountain? And other days I'm like, I'm on top of the mountain. And other days I'm like, oh my God, does my therapist have an opening ASAP? Because I just got kicked in the churro, man. Like, it's bad. But you don't give up. That's the big part.
And have you started to see some of those changes? I mean, we hear the talk, and there have been more. It does seem like there's more writers. At the very least, like the fact that there is more talk about it highlights it a bit more, and at the very least shines a bigger spotlight on it.
My issue with it being in the spotlight is being talked about is like, it still feels like it's just being talked about. It doesn't feel like there's actually something happening. You know, it feels like the same stuff is still happening. In fact, just the other day I looked at, right now is pitch season for Hollywood. That means all the networks buy all these TV show ideas between now and the end of October. And last year, a network had 7 comedies that they bought, 7 Latino comedies that they bought. This year, that same network has 2. So sometimes it feels like, are we moving backwards or what's not happening? It's not that there's not talent to do that, because I know plenty of writers who are levels below me and levels above me who have great ideas. So sometimes there's just no math why it's not happening. And sometimes it's about just having somebody attached to it or somebody having a deal about it. But right now it still feels like the same people who are talking about it are talking about it, you know, and the same people who are doing something. But unless the gatekeepers who are talking about it are actually doing something, then we're just going to be in the same place that we're in all the time. Because you can't tell me that there's not talent. Like you can't tell me that it doesn't exist. You know, one of the things that Fargo did when he couldn't find someone here, he like went to Chicago, right? Like the world exists outside of us. A lot of diversity showcases happen in Hollywood with all the networks for talent and for writers. But there is kind of a negative side to that on the writing, where if you're hired as a diversity writer, the other writers can tend to have a mark against you because they think that you got some shortcut. You know, you got like, you didn't get it the real way. Like, we don't fill out applications like we're working at Pinkberry. We actually still have to have scripts, and we still have to go through the same thing everybody else goes through, except there's a different pool of money to diversify behind the camera, which is my first job, was as a diversity writer.
What sort of advice would you start to give someone who is trying to now break into this industry, and maybe even more so, like if they are a person of color or a woman or just one of the minority groups trying to break into this industry?
I think if you're a minority and you're trying to break into Hollywood, there are 2 things that I think have served me well. One is to have a lot of patience. And I think that's just not even about being a minority, but knowing that the challenge can be harder and can be longer, and, you know, not be accepted as quickly because you are going through different kinds of obstacles. But I also think that weeds out people who really want to do it or not want to do it. You know, I laughed once. Somebody was like, I've been here 2 years. And I'm like, what? I'm like, 2 years is nothing. 2 years is like just enough for you to figure out how to not take the highway. Like, that's nothing. But it's just finding out what your true voice is while you're here. And knowing that it is a little more challenging. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that it's not, you know. I think it's challenging for everybody who comes. But I think especially as a minority writer, you're then kind of tagged as a minority writer, which sometimes it could be helpful, you know, if they're writing on Narcos and they need a Latino writer. But I was like, dude, I don't write about drugs and pregnant 16-year-olds. Like, there's a million stories like that. So I don't have a story for you. But somebody who grew up in that environment in whatever way whatsoever can be like, I did, and that's a benefit to a show like that. So I think it all depends. And I will say that people who have a minority background or upbringing, they do have a unique story that they can tell. Like, there is still a piece that we all have. Like, you know, when I hang out with my Latina writer friends, we all kind of have very similar Christmases or very similar holidays, or Christella and I joke about how people tell us how Mexican we are and how Mexican we're not. And so we like have lots of jokes about people, even when you say you're something, they're like, well, you're not really that much. You're all because I'm not dark skinned, or, you know, so we say a lot of inappropriate jokes around it that I probably wouldn't share. But it's still, there's still individual stories within that stereotype that is still uniquely you. So I think that that's the piece that I always tell people, get to what that piece is. So when you meet someone, they don't just hear the same thing. Oh, hi, I'm Emilia, I'm a Latino writer. You know, they have to hear something different. I tell people, I always say, I'm a Latino writer from, you know, I went to an all-girls high school, and I grew up Catholic, and I was raised by a Mexican mechanic dad and basically a Mexican flash dance mom, because she worked at a car factory by day and sang mariachi and boleros at night. And that's that piece where people remember me, because it's something that, listen, mariachi, why is my hair all being weird in my necklace? Your family listen to mariachi music isn't unique to any Latino, right? I mean, we all know what they are. We all know boleros. We all cried when Jenny Rivera and Juan Gabriel died. Like, it was all a piece of us. But the difference is that my mom actually sang those songs in a band. She was on Univision. You know, it's like, those are the pieces of my upbringing that I can say are very separate from other people's. And so I don't spend too much time on the things that I share with everybody else. I spend more time on the individualized parts of my upbringing. And that's what I would say to minorities, is like, you have to come in to say, what is that unique point of view that you're bringing that somebody else who's next to you who you think is just the same.
All right, great. Thanks a lot for getting a chance to talk with us. These videos will be uploaded onto our YouTube as well as onto our Facebook within the next week or so.
Okay.
Thanks, Millie, for getting a chance to talk with us, and have a great day.
You too. Bye.